Imagine, if you will, a land of rolling green hills, of ancient oak forests and winding rivers, of sheep-dotted meadows and fields of golden grain. This is England in the year of our Lord 1290, a land where the rhythms of nature still govern the pace of every day, where the church bells mark the hours, and where small villages nestle in the folds of the countryside like birds settled into their nests. We are traveling now to one such village. It lies in the gentle Cotswold hills, where the stone beneath the earth is the color of warm honey, and the sheep that graze the hillsides produce wool so fine that it is traded across the known world. The village is called Aldford, the Old Ford, for it has grown up around an ancient crossing place where a clear stream runs shallow over smooth stones. People have been crossing here for as long as anyone can remember, and longer still. Picture the village now as we approach it from the east, walking along a rutted lane that winds between hedgerows bright with bird-song. The morning is soft and gray, a gentle spring morning, and the air carries the scent of damp earth and growing things. Ahead, you can see the first cottages coming into view, small dwellings of timber and thatch, with walls of wattle and daub painted white with lime. Thin ribbons of smoke rise from their rooftops, and somewhere a rooster crows its greeting to the day. At the heart of the village stands the church of St. Mary, its square stone tower rising above the surrounding homes like a shepherd watching over a flock. The church is not grand by the standards of cathedrals, but to the people of Aldford it is the center of all things, the place where they are baptized and married and buried, where they gather each Sunday and on the many feast days that punctuate the year, where Father Anselm speaks to them of heaven and offers comfort in their earthly sorrows. Beyond the church, you can see the village green, a broad, open space where geese waddle and children play, and the weekly market sets up its stalls each Thursday. Around the green cluster, the most important buildings of the village, the mill with its great wooden wheel turned by the stream, the blacksmith's forge with its perpetual glow, the alehouse where men gather in the evenings to share news and ale, and beyond the village proper, up a gentle rise to the north, stands the manor house of Sir Geoffrey de Aldford, a solid stone dwelling surrounded by outbuildings and gardens, by Orsting orchards and fish ponds. Sir Geoffrey is the lord of this land, and the villagers are his tenants, bound to him by ties of obligation and custom that stretch back generations. It is a relationship of duty and dependence, but also, in this place and time, one of genuine connection, for Sir Geoffrey knows the names of the families who work his fields, and his lady wife, Isabel, is known throughout the village for her charity to those in need. This is Aldford. It is home to perhaps 200 souls, farmers and craftsmen, wives and children, the young and the old. Their lives are shaped by the land and the seasons, by the teachings of the church, by traditions passed down from parents to children for time beyond memory. They work hard, these people, harder than we might easily imagine, but they also rest and celebrate and love and dream. They gather for festivals and feast days. They tell stories by firelight on winter evenings. They watch the stars wheel overhead and wonder at the vastness of creation. Over the course of this evening, we shall spend a year among them. We shall watch the snow melt and the fields turn green with spring. We shall feel the heat of midsummer and the golden abundance of harvest. We shall draw close to the fire as winter darkens the land, and we shall celebrate with them the turning of the year and the promise of light returning. But let us not hurry. Time moves differently here in Aldford, more slowly, more gently, shaped by the rising and setting of the sun rather than by clocks and schedules. Let us settle into that older rhythm now. Let us allow the modern world to fade and grow distant until there is only the village and the people who dwell here and the great wheel of the year turning slowly, peacefully beneath the endless English sky. Our year begins in spring. The 25th of March, Lady Day. In the village of Aldford, as throughout all of England, this is the day when the new year truly begins, not in the dead of winter, but here, at the edge of spring, when the earth itself seems to stir and stretch after its long sleep. The morning comes slowly, a gradual lightening of the sky from black to deep blue to the soft gray of a dove's wing. In the cottage of Edmund the blacksmith, the first sounds of waking begin well before dawn. Edmund is a man in his middle years, his hair gray at the temples, his hands broad and strong but marked by the aches that come from decades of swinging hammer against anvil. He rises from his straw-stuffed mattress quietly so as not to wake his son Thomas, who sleeps on a pallet near the banked fire. The cottage is simple but solid, a single room with a packed earth floor, a central hearth, and a loft above where dried herbs and onions hang from the rafters. The walls are hung with Edmund's tools, each one in its proper place, each one known to him as well as his own fingers. There is comfort in this order, in the familiar shapes emerging from the dimness as his eyes adjust. Edmund moves to the hearth and stirs the embers, adding small sticks until a flame catches. The warmth reaches toward him like a greeting from an old friend. He hangs a pot of water over the fire for porridge and stands for a moment, watching the flames dance, thinking of the day ahead. Lady Day is a day of beginnings. Rents are due to Sir Geoffrey, and contracts made on this day will hold for the coming year. There will be a service at St. Mary's, and afterward the village will gather to acknowledge the turning of the season. But first there is work to be done. There is always work to be done. Across the village, others are waking too. Let us follow the thin gray smoke that rises from a cottage near the mill, where Agnes the weaver lives with her 2 young daughters. Agnes has been a widow for 3 winters now, since a fever took her husband Robert during a wet and bitter January. The grief has softened with time, as grief does, leaving behind a kind of quiet strength that her neighbors have come to respect and rely upon. Agnes's loom dominates the main room of her cottage, a large wooden frame strung with threads of wool, the work in progress of a length of cloth that will eventually become a cloak for one of Sir Geoffrey's household. The loom was Robert's before it was hers, and learning to use it properly was the work of her first year alone. Now her fingers move across the threads with practiced ease, and the cloth she produces is known throughout the village for its evenness and quality. This morning, Agnes rises and tends to her daughters, Nell, who is 7, and little Joan, who is 4. She plats their hair and washes their faces with water from the pitcher, speaking to them softly about the day ahead. There will be honey cakes after the church service, she tells them, and perhaps they will see the first lambs in the fields if they walk out past the mill. The girl's eyes brighten at this prospect, and Agnes feels a warmth spread through her chest that has nothing to do with the fire in the hearth. This is the gift of children, she thinks. They remind you that the world is still full of wonder. By mid-morning, the village of Aldford has fully awakened. The service at St. Mary's has concluded, Father Anselm's gentle voice still echoing in the minds of those who attended, his words about new beginnings and the grace of God settling over them like a benediction. Now the practical work of the day resumes, and we find ourselves drawn to the warmth and rhythm of Edmund's forge. The forge is set slightly apart from the other buildings for obvious reasons. The fire that burns here is hot enough to soften iron, and the sparks that fly from Edmund's hammer could easily catch a thatched roof alight. The building itself is open on one side, allowing the smoke to escape and giving Edmund light to work by. Inside, the great bellows breathe life into the coals, and the anvil stands ready, its surface worn smooth by generations of use. Edmund's son Thomas works the bellows now, a young man of 16 with his father's strong build and his late mother's thoughtful eyes. Thomas has been learning the blacksmith's craft since he was old enough to hold a hammer, and while he does not yet possess his father's skill, he is patient and willing to learn, qualities that matter more, Edmund often says, than natural talent. Today they are making nails. It is not glamorous work, but it is necessary. Nails are needed for everything from building repairs to shoeing horses, and a village can never have too many. Edmund heats a rod of iron in the coals until it glows orange, then draws it out with his tongs and begins to shape it with quick, precise blows of his hammer. The rhythm is almost musical. The hiss of hot metal, the ring of hammer on anvil, the soft whoosh of the bellows as Thomas works to keep the fire at the proper heat. Villagers stop by throughout the morning, as they always do. The forge is a gathering place, a spot where news is shared and problems are discussed while waiting for a tool to be mended or a horse to be shod. Old Walter, whose plow blade has developed a crack, stands warming his hands by the fire and speaks of how the soil feels this year. Soft and ready, he says, eager for the seed. Young Martin, the shepherd's apprentice, brings a broken crook and tells of the lambing that has begun in the high pastures, of the new lives entering the world under the watchful eyes of the ewes. Edmund listens and nods, offering a word here and there, but mostly he lets his hammer speak for him. He has never been a man of many words. His wife Catherine used to tease him about it, saying she could count on one hand the sentences he spoke in a day. The memory brings a small smile to his face, bittersweet, but no longer sharp with pain. Catherine has been gone for 8 years now, taken by childbed fever along with a daughter who would have been Thomas's sister. Edmund has not remarried, though several women in the village have made it known they would welcome his attention. He is not opposed to the idea, but neither is he in any hurry. Thomas is nearly grown. The forge provides. Life is not empty. Perhaps, he thinks, as he watches the iron cool from orange to red to gray, perhaps it is enough to be useful. Perhaps it is enough to make things that other people need, to feel the satisfaction of a job well done, to fall into bed at night with tired muscles and a quiet mind. It is a good life, Edmund thinks. Simple, but good. The days lengthen. The sun rises earlier and sets later, and the quality of the light changes, growing softer and warmer as spring settles over the land. In the great open fields that surround Aldford, the work of plowing has begun in earnest. Let us walk out now along the lane that leads west from the village, past the mill where old Hugh and his daughter Cecily are grinding the last of the winter's grain, past the alehouse where a few men sit on benches in the thin sunshine, past the cottage where old Marjorie tends her garden of herbs and simples. The lane becomes a track, and the track leads us through a gate into the vast expanse of the common fields. The medieval field system would seem strange to modern eyes. There are no fences dividing the land into neat parcels. Instead, the fields are divided into long, narrow strips, each strip belonging to a different family, but all worked in common according to the rhythm of the season. This year the west field lies fallow, resting and recovering its strength. The east field will be planted with spring crops, oats and barley and peas. And the great south field, the largest of the three, is being prepared for wheat. We can see the plowing teams now, dark shapes moving slowly across the brown earth. Each team consists of a heavy wooden plow drawn by a pair of oxen, guided by a plowman who walks behind, his hands steady on the handles, his voice low and calm as he speaks to his beasts. The oxen are patient creatures, massive and slow, their breath steaming in the cool morning air. They have been doing this work for as long as their kind can remember, and their steady pace never varies. Among the plowmen is young Will, the son of Richard the plowman, who is working a strip that belongs to his family. Will is perhaps 22 or 23, broad-shouldered and strong, with a face that is honest and open and quick to smile. He has been working alongside his father since childhood, and now he handles the plow with easy confidence, feeling through the wooden handles the texture of the soil beneath, knowing by instinct when to press down and when to ease up, when the blade is cutting true and when it has begun to drift. But today Will finds his attention wandering. His eyes keep straying toward the mill, just visible in the distance, where he knows that Cecily is working. Cecily, with her quick laugh and her clever eyes, and the way she tilts her head when she is listening to something that interests her. Will has known Cecily since they were children, but something has changed in recent months. He finds himself thinking about her at odd moments, when he is mending a fence, when he is lying awake in the darkness before sleep, when he sees a particularly beautiful sunset and wishes, for reasons he cannot quite explain, that she were there to see it too. He has not spoken of these feelings to anyone. He is not even certain what to call them, but they are there, warm and persistent, like the spring sun on his back as he guides the plow through the dark earth. Will does not know it yet, but Cecily has noticed him too. She has noticed the way he carries himself, steady and sure. She has noticed his kindness to the younger children in the village, the patience he shows with the old ox that sometimes limps. She has noticed that he is not like some of the other young men who boast and swagger and seem to think the world owes them something simply for existing. But Cecily is practical, as the daughter of a miller must be. She knows that noticing a young man and building a life with him are two very different things. There are considerations to be made, whether her father would approve, whether Will has enough land or prospects to support a family, whether the two of them could make a home together that would be warm and safe and lasting. Still, she thinks, as she watches the plowing teams from the doorway of the mill, there is no harm in noticing. There is no harm in wondering what might be. The weeks pass, and the great feast of Easter approaches. This is the holiest day of the Christian year, more important even than Christmas, for it celebrates the resurrection of Christ and the promise of eternal life. In the village of Aldford, preparations for Easter have been underway for some time. The 40 days of Lent have been a period of fasting and reflection, of doing without meat and eggs and cheese, of attending extra services at St. Mary's and examining one's conscience for sins to confess. For the villagers who work hard and eat simply even in the best of times, the Lenten fast is no light burden, but they bear it willingly, for they believe that this temporary sacrifice brings them closer to God and prepares their souls for the joy that is to come. Father Anselm has been busy throughout Lent, hearing confessions and offering guidance, preparing his Easter sermon, and arranging for the decoration of the church. Father Anselm is a man in his 6th decade, with a gentle face and patient eyes that have seen much of human nature in his years of ministry. He came to Aldford as a young priest, full of idealism and book learning, and the decades have worn away some of that early zeal, replacing it with something deeper and more durable, a genuine love for the people in his care, a faith that has been tested by doubt and emerged stronger for it. On the morning of Easter Sunday, Father Anselm rises before the first light of dawn to prepare for the day ahead. The church has been cleaned and decorated with the first spring flowers, primroses and violets, and the delicate white blooms of wild garlic. The altar cloth has been changed from the somber purple of Lent to the bright white of the resurrection, and the paschal candle, tall and thick and marked with the symbols of Christ, stands ready to be lit, its flame symbolizing the light of the risen Lord entering into the darkness of the world. The villagers begin to gather while the sky is still gray, filing into the church in their best clothes, simple garments for the most part, but clean and carefully mended. The women have covered their hair with white kerchiefs, and some of the children carry small bunches of flowers to lay at the foot of the altar. There is a sense of anticipation in the air, of joy barely contained, of something wonderful about to happen. The service begins in darkness, with only the faint glow of the sanctuary lamp to see by. Father Anselm's voice rises in the ancient words of the liturgy, and the congregation responds, their voices blending together in the familiar rhythms of prayer. And then, at the moment when the first rays of the rising sun begin to stream through the east window, the paschal candle is lit and light floods the church, and the congregation bursts into song, Alleluia. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. After the service, the village gathers on the green for the breaking of the Lenten fast. Eggs that have been saved and decorated are shared among the children. Meat appears on tables for the first time in 40 days. Roasted mutton and pork pies and savory puddings. There is laughter and music and the sound of children playing, released from the solemnity of the season into the freedom of celebration. And everywhere, in the fields and hedgerows and farmyards, new life is appearing. The lambs that were born in the high pastures have been brought down to the village, and they frolic on unsteady legs while their mothers watch with patient eyes. Chicks are hatching in the coops, and calves are nursing in the byres, and in the gardens, green shoots are pushing up through the dark soil, reaching toward the light. This is the promise of Easter, the villagers know. This is what the resurrection means, not just a story from long ago, but a truth made visible in the world around them, in the eternal cycle of death and rebirth, of winter yielding to spring, of darkness giving way to light. The weeks that follow Easter are busy ones, filled with the work of planting and tending, of watching the weather and hoping for the right balance of rain and sun. But as the 1st of May approaches, a different kind of energy begins to stir in the village. May Day is coming, and with it, the most joyful celebration of the spring. On the eve of May Day, groups of young people slip away into the woods to gather branches of hawthorn, the May blossom with its delicate white flowers and its sweet, intoxicating scent. This is an old custom, older than the church, reaching back into times when people believed that bringing the May blossom into the village would ensure good luck and fertility for the coming year. The church has never quite known what to make of this tradition, but Father Anselm is wise enough to look the other way, understanding that some customs run deeper than doctrine. When morning comes, the village is transformed. Every doorway is decorated with May blossom and greenery. A great maypole has been erected on the green, its tall wooden shaft hung with ribbons of every color. And the villagers have donned their brightest clothes, the women with flowers braided into their hair, the men with green branches pinned to their tunics. The celebrations begin early and continue throughout the day. There is Morris dancing, with its bells and sticks and ancient, mysterious movements. There are games and contests, foot races and wrestling matches and competitions to see who can climb the greased pole fastest. There is music from pipe and tabor, and there is feasting on sweet cakes and fresh cheese and the first strawberries of the season. But the heart of May Day is the dancing around the maypole, and it is here that we find young Will, nervously watching as the young people of the village begin to gather. He has scrubbed himself clean and put on his best tunic, and he has practiced in his mind 100 times what he might say to Cecily if he finds the courage to speak to her. Cecily is there, of course, with flowers in her brown hair and a smile on her face that makes Will's heart feel too large for his chest. She is standing with a group of other young women, laughing at something one of them has said. And then, as if she feels his gaze upon her, she looks up and meets his eyes across the green. For a long moment, neither of them moves. The noise of the celebration seems to fade, and there is only the two of them, caught in a moment that feels like the whole world holding its breath. And then Cecily smiles, a small, private smile meant only for him, and Will feels something loosen in his chest, some knot of fear and uncertainty that has been there for months without his knowing it. The music for the maypole dance begins, and the young people take their places, each holding a ribbon attached to the top of the pole. The dance is intricate, requiring the dancers to weave in and out of each other, passing left and right in a pattern that slowly braids the ribbons around the pole. And whether by chance or by design, Will finds himself partnered with Cecily, their hands brushing as they pass, their eyes meeting again and again as the ribbons weave and the music plays and the spring sun shines down upon them all. They do not speak. There will be time for words later, for awkward conversations and careful negotiations, for asking permission and making promises. But for now, in this moment, Words are not necessary. Something has begun between them, as natural and inevitable as the green shoots pushing up through the earth, as the May blossom opening to the sun. Spring has come to Aldford, and with it the stirring of new love. As May gives way to June and June ripens into July, the days stretch long and golden over the village of Aldford. The sun rises early and sets late, and in between the light seems to go on forever, soft and warm and honey-colored, touching everything with a gentle glow. At Edmund's forge, the pace of work has quickened with the season. Summer is the time when tools must be mended and sharpened, when scythes must be prepared for the coming harvest, when horseshoes must be checked and replaced before the heavy work of bringing in the grain. Edmund and Thomas work from first light until well after dark, the fire of the forge never quite dying, the ring of the hammer echoing across the village like a heartbeat. Let us spend some time with them now, in the drowsy heat of a July afternoon. The forge is even hotter than usual, the air shimmering with waves of warmth that rise from the coals. Edmund has stripped down to his shirt, his sleeves rolled above his elbows, revealing forearms roped with muscle and marked with the small scars that are the blacksmith's badges of honor. Thomas works the bellows with a steady rhythm, his face flushed and his hair damp with sweat. They are making a new blade for Walter's scythe, a delicate piece of work that requires all of Edmund's skill. The blade must be thin enough to cut through grain stalks with a single sweep, but strong enough to hold its edge through long days of hard use. Edmund heats the metal until it glows, then hammers it thin, folding it over on itself again and again to drive out impurities and create a layered structure that will be both flexible and hard. It is work that requires patience and precision, a kind of meditation in metal and fire. As they work, villagers come and go, seeking the shade of the forge's overhang and the company of their neighbors. Old Marjorie stops by with a bundle of herbs. "Comfrey for Thomas's blistered hands," she says, and a tincture of willow bark for Edmund's aching joints. She refuses any payment, as she always does, saying only that the village takes care of its own. Marjorie is a woman out of time, the villagers sometimes think. She was old when the oldest among them were young, and she seems likely to go on being old forever, her bent back and wrinkled face unchanged by the passing years. She lives alone in a small cottage at the edge of the village, surrounded by her garden of herbs and simples, and the villagers come to her with their ailments and their troubles, trusting her wisdom as much as Father Anselm's. Some whisper that Marjorie knows things she should not know, that she can read the future in the patterns of birds' flight, that she speaks to the spirits of the wood and stream, that the old ways live on in her memory and practice. But these whispers are mostly fond rather than fearful, for Marjorie has never been anything but kind, and her remedies work more often than not, and in a world full of uncertainty, there is comfort in believing that someone, somewhere, understands the hidden workings of things. Today, Marjorie settles herself on a stool in the corner of the forge and watches Edmund work, her bright eyes missing nothing. After a while she speaks, her voice thin but clear. She tells Edmund that his Catherine would be proud of the man Thomas is becoming. She tells him that grief has a season like everything else, and that perhaps the season is turning for him. She does not say more than this, but Edmund understands her meaning, and he finds that he is not offended by it. Marjorie has earned the right to speak plainly, and there is truth in her words that he has been slow to acknowledge. That evening, after the forge has cooled, and Thomas has gone to the alehouse to drink with friends his own age, Edmund sits alone in his cottage and thinks about what Marjorie said. He thinks about Catherine and the years they had together, and the grief that followed her passing. He thinks about the future stretching out before him and wonders what shape it might take. He does not reach any conclusions, but something has shifted in him. Some door has opened that was closed before, and when he finally sleeps, his dreams are not of the past, but of something new and as yet unknown. The longest day of the year arrives on the 21st of June, and with it comes the feast of Midsummer, one of the most magical nights in the turning of the year. From the earliest times, people have marked this day when the sun reaches the peak of its power, hanging in the sky as if reluctant to depart, flooding the world with light. In Aldford, the midsummer celebrations begin in the evening, when the day's work is done and the shadows are just beginning to lengthen. The villagers gather on the green, where a great bonfire has been built, a towering structure of logs and branches that will burn through the night. Father Anselm offers a blessing, invoking St. John the Baptist, whose feast day this is, and asking for protection and prosperity in the months to come. And then the fire is lit, and the flames leap up toward the darkening sky, and the celebration begins. There is food and drink in abundance, roasted meats and fresh bread, cheese and butter and bowls of early berries, ale that has been cooling in the stream since morning. There is music and dancing, the old songs that everyone knows, the steps that have been danced here for generations beyond counting. And as the night deepens and the fire burns low, there are the old customs, the midsummer magic that the church tolerates but does not quite approve of. Young women gather fern seeds, which are said to be visible only on this one night of the year, believing that carrying them will grant the power of invisibility or reveal the face of a future husband. Couples leap over the embers of the dying fire, hand in hand, for luck and fertility, and some walk out into the fields and meadows to gather herbs, for plants picked on Midsummer's Eve are believed to have special power, whether for healing or for love. Among those walking out into the soft summer darkness are Will and Cecily. Their courtship has progressed since May Day, slowly, properly, with Will speaking to Cecily's father, Hugh, and receiving cautious permission to spend time with her under appropriate supervision. But tonight, with the whole village distracted by the celebration, they have slipped away for a few moments alone. They walk along the path that leads to the stream, the air around them thick with the scent of honeysuckle and wild roses. The sky above is not quite dark, holding on to the last light of the long day, a deep blue scattered with the first faint stars. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls, and closer by, the stream murmurs over its bed of stones. They do not speak much. There's no need for words. Will reaches out and takes Cecily's hand, and she lets him, her fingers intertwining with his. They stand together at the water's edge, watching the light fade, feeling the warmth of each other's presence, and in that moment the future seems very clear and very bright. This is enough, Will thinks. This is everything. July brings the haymaking, one of the most important tasks of the agricultural year. The meadows around Aldford have grown thick and lush with summer grass, and now that grass must be cut and dried and stored to feed the livestock through the coming winter. It is hard work, but it is also communal work, bringing the whole village together in a shared effort that strengthens the bonds between neighbors and friends. Let us join them now on a bright July morning as they gather at the edge of the great meadow with their scythes and rakes and pitchforks. The men will do the cutting, moving in a long line across the field, their scythes swinging in unison, the grass falling before them in long, fragrant swaths. The women and children will follow behind, spreading the cut grass to dry in the sun, turning it regularly to ensure it cures evenly, and eventually raking it into great mounds to be carted back to the barns. The work begins at dawn when the dew is still on the grass, for the scythes cut best when the stalks are moist and heavy. Edmund is there, despite his aching hands, for haymaking is a task that requires every able body in the village. Will is there, of course, and his father Richard, and a dozen other men whose names we have not yet learned, but whose faces are familiar from the church and the alehouse and the weekly market. And Sir Geoffrey is there too, which surprises no one who knows him. The lord of the manor is not required to work alongside his tenants, but Sir Geoffrey has always believed that a leader should not ask others to do what he is unwilling to do himself. He is not the strongest or the fastest of the mowers, but he keeps pace with the others, and his presence reminds everyone that they are all part of the same community, bound together by ties that go beyond mere obligation. Lady Isabel has come as well, bringing with her servants carrying baskets of food and drink to sustain the workers through the long day. She moves among the women and children, offering a kind word here and a helping hand there, her presence as natural and unforced as her husband's. The villagers speak well of Lady Isabel, for she has been generous in times of need, providing food when harvests have failed, nursing the sick during times of fever, always remembering the names of children and the troubles of their parents. The day passes in a rhythm of work and rest, of effort and refreshment. By midday the sun is high and hot, and the workers retreat to the shade of a great oak tree to eat their dinner and drink their ale. Stories are told, and jokes are shared, and even the divisions of rank seem to blur a little in the easy fellowship of the moment. In the afternoon the work resumes, and by evening, when the shadows grow long and the air begins to cool, the meadow has been transformed. Where this morning there was a sea of waving grass, now there are long rows of cut hay drying in the slanting light, filling the air with a scent that is one of the purest smells of summer. In the days that follow, the hay will be turned and gathered, carted to the barns, and stacked in great fragrant mounds that will sustain the cattle and horses and sheep through the cold months ahead. But for now, the villagers gather their tools and begin the walk back home, tired but satisfied, knowing that they have done good work together. This is the heart of village life, this sense of shared purpose and mutual dependence. No one in Aldford can survive alone. The blacksmith needs the farmer's grain. The farmer needs the blacksmith's tools. The weaver needs the shepherd's wool. The shepherd needs the weaver's cloth. And all of them need each other in ways both practical and profound for companionship and support, and the simple comfort of knowing that they are not alone in the world. Tonight, the villagers will sleep deeply, their bodies tired and their minds at peace. And tomorrow, the work will begin again, as it always does, as it always will, in the eternal turning of the seasons. August arrives, and with it comes Lammas, the feast of first fruits, when the first grain of the harvest is cut and baked into a loaf that is blessed at the church and shared among the people. It is a day of thanksgiving, a recognition that the long work of planting and tending has begun to bear fruit, that the bounty of the earth is once again providing for human needs. In the days leading up to Lammas, there is a sense of anticipation in the village. The wheat in the south field has ripened to gold, heavy-headed and rustling in the summer breeze. The villagers watch the sky anxiously, praying for continued dry weather, for rain at this stage could flatten the crop and ruin months of labor. But the skies remain clear, and on the morning of August 1st, the harvest begins. The first sheaf of wheat is cut with ceremony, the honor going this year to old Walter, who has worked these fields longer than anyone can remember. His hands, gnarled with age and labor, still remember the rhythm of the scythe, and he cuts the grain with 3 clean strokes while the villagers watch in silence. This sheaf will be taken to the mill, ground into flour, and baked into the Lammas loaf that Father Anselm will bless at the morning Mass. The service is simple but moving. Father Anselm speaks of gratitude, of the miracle of seed becoming grain, of the partnership between human effort and divine providence that makes life possible. The Lammas loaf is placed on the altar, gold-encrusted and fragrant, and after the blessing it is broken and shared among all who are present, a taste of the harvest to come, a promise of the plenty that lies ahead. After the Mass, the real work begins. The harvest will take many days, perhaps weeks, depending on the weather and the size of the crop. Every hand is needed, from the smallest child who can gather fallen grain to the oldest grandfather who can still wield a rake. The days blur together in a haze of heat and effort, of aching backs and blistered hands, of dust in the throat and chaff in the hair. But there is joy in it too, a fierce satisfaction in watching the great shocks of grain rise up across the field, in knowing that the barns will be full and the winter will be survivable. And in the evenings, when the work is done, there is time for rest and fellowship, for songs and stories, for the quiet pleasure of watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of rose and gold. Agnes, the weaver, works alongside the others, her daughters helping as best they can. Little Joan is too young for heavy labor, but she carries water to the thirsty workers and chases away the birds that try to steal the grain. Nell, who is nearly 8 now and proud of it, works alongside the older girls, her small hands quick and careful as she gathers the fallen heads of wheat. Agnes watches her daughters and feels a complex mix of pride and sorrow. They are growing up so fast, these girls. In a few years, Nell will be old enough to marry, to start a family of her own, to leave the cottage where she was born and begin a new chapter of her life. The thought is bittersweet, as all thoughts of the future are for a mother. The joy of seeing one's children flourish, the ache of knowing that they must eventually leave. But that is the way of things, Agnes knows. The generations rise and fall like the grain in the fields, each one making way for the next. Her own mother told her this long ago, and now she tells it to her daughters, passing on the wisdom that has sustained her people for time beyond memory. The harvest continues sheaf by sheaf, day by day, until at last the final grain is cut and carried and stored, and then the village rests and breathes and gives thanks for another year of life. September comes, and with it a change in the quality of the light. The fierce brightness of summer softens into something gentler, more golden, as if the sun itself is growing tired and preparing for its long winter rest. The leaves on the oaks and elms begin to turn, their green giving way to yellow and orange and red, and the air carries a new crispness, a hint of the cold months to come. The 29th of September is Michaelmas, the feast of Saint Michael the Archangel, and in Aldford, as throughout England, it is one of the great marker days of the year. Rents are due and accounts are settled, contracts end and new ones begin. Servants who wish to seek new positions may give notice, and masters who wish to release them may do so. It is a day of endings and beginnings, of looking back and looking forward. For Sir Geoffrey, Michaelmas is a day of solemn responsibility. He sits in the great hall of the manor house with his steward beside him, and receives his tenants one by one. They bring their rents, some in coin, some in kind, a portion of the harvest that is owed for the use of his land. Sir Geoffrey knows each of them by name, knows their families and their circumstances, and he listens as they speak of the year that has passed, the challenges they have faced, the blessings they have received. There are some who cannot pay the full amount owed, and with these Sir Geoffrey is patient. A widow whose husband died at planting time, a family struck by illness in the summer months, a young man whose crops were damaged by a late storm. For these Sir Geoffrey offers forbearance, reducing their debt or extending the time for payment, understanding that a lord who crushes his tenants destroys the foundation on which his own prosperity rests. This is not pure generosity, of course. Sir Geoffrey is a practical man, and he knows that a thriving tenantry is worth more than a few extra coins wrung from desperate hands. But there is kindness in him too, a genuine concern for the people who work his land and depend on his protection. He has seen lords who rule through fear and extraction, and he has seen the ruin that follows, the abandoned fields, the empty villages, the poverty that spreads like plague. He has no wish to join their number. After the business of rents is concluded, there is feasting. The Michaelmas goose is the centerpiece of the meal, a great bird, fattened on the stubble of the harvested fields, roasted until its skin is crisp and golden. The aroma fills the manor hall, mixing with the scent of fresh bread and roasted apples and spiced wine. Sir Geoffrey and Lady Isabel sit at the high table, and their tenants fill the hall below, and for this one evening the divisions of rank are set aside in favor of shared celebration. There is music and laughter, stories and songs. Old Marjorie is coaxed into telling one of her tales, and she speaks of Saint Michael and the dragon, of the eternal battle between light and darkness, of the angels who watch over the faithful and guard them from harm. The children listen with wide eyes, and even the adults lean forward, caught up in the magic of her words. Later, when the feast is ending and the villagers are preparing to walk home through the cool September night, Sir Geoffrey stands at the door of the hall and bids each of them farewell by name. It is a small gesture, but it matters. The villagers feel seen, feel known, feel that they belong to something larger than themselves. This is what community means in this time and place. Not equality, that is a concept that would make little sense to anyone here, but belonging. Everyone has their place, their role, their duties, and their rights. And when the system works as it should, when the Lord is just and the tenants are loyal, there is a kind of harmony that sustains them all. October brings the apple harvest, and the orchards around Aldford are heavy with fruit. There are cooking apples and eating apples, cider apples and keeping apples, each variety with its own character and its own use. The trees bend under the weight of their bounty, and the air is filled with the sweet, slightly fermented scent of ripe fruit. Let us follow Agnes and her daughters as they make their way to the orchard on a bright October morning. Agnes has been granted permission to gather the windfall apples, those that have fallen from the trees and lie scattered on the ground, in exchange for a portion of the cider that will be pressed from them. It is a fair arrangement, and one that benefits both parties, for Sir Geoffrey's orchards produce more fruit than his household can use, and Agnes's family can always use the extra provision. The girls run ahead, their laughter ringing through the cool morning air. Little Joan spins in circles beneath the trees, her arms outstretched, trying to catch the falling leaves. Nell moves more purposefully, her eyes scanning the ground for the best apples, the ones that are bruised but not rotten, still firm enough to be useful. Agnes follows more slowly, a basket on her arm, her mind drifting as her body performs the familiar work. She thinks about the winter ahead, about the provisions she has stored and those she still needs to gather. She thinks about her daughters, about the future she hopes to build for them. She thinks about her late husband Robert, who loved this time of year, who would have been here beside her, laughing and joking and sneaking bites of apple when he thought she wasn't looking. The grief is softer now, worn smooth by time, like a stone in a stream bed. It no longer cuts her the way it once did, but it is still there, a part of her, woven into the fabric of who she is. She does not wish it away. To wish away the grief would be to wish away the love that caused it, and that she could never do. As the morning passes, the baskets fill with apples. Agnes shows the girls how to sort them, the best for eating fresh, the slightly damaged for cooking, the bruised and blemished for cider. Nothing is wasted in a medieval village. Nothing can be afforded to be wasted. When the work is done, they sit beneath an old apple tree and share a simple meal, bread and cheese and a few of the sweetest apples. The sun filters through the leaves above them, dappling the ground with light and shadow. A robin hops nearby, hoping for crumbs. And for a moment, everything is perfect. Everything is exactly as it should be. These are the moments that sustain us, Agnes thinks. Not the grand events, the feasts and festivals, but the small, quiet moments of peace and connection. A meal shared with those we love. A task completed well. The warmth of the sun on our faces and the solid ground beneath our feet. This is enough, she thinks, echoing Will's thought from the summer past, though she does not know it. This is everything. As October draws to a close, a change comes over the village of Aldford. The days grow shorter, the nights grow longer, and there is a feeling in the air that is hard to describe. A sense of thinning, of boundaries becoming permeable, of the world of the living drawing close to the world of the dead. All Hallows' Eve, the night before the feast of All Saints is a time when the veil between worlds is said to be at its thinnest. The souls of the departed walk abroad, returning to the places they knew in life. Some come to bless, and some come to trouble, and wise folk take precautions against both. In the cottage of old Marjorie, preparations are underway. Marjorie is not troubled by the approach of All Hallows Eve. She has seen too many of them to be frightened, but she takes the old customs seriously, for she knows that there is truth in them, even if that truth is not quite what the simple folk believe. She sets out a bowl of milk and a plate of cakes by her door, offerings for any spirits that might pass by. She hangs bundles of dried herbs above her windows, rowan for protection, elder for wisdom, mugwort for sight. She lights a candle in her window to guide the friendly dead and warn away the others, and she sits by her fire, waiting, listening, open to whatever the night might bring. Across the village, other preparations are being made. Bonfires are lit on the hills around Aldford, their flames visible for miles, beacons against the darkness. Children go from door to door wearing masks and crude costumes, receiving treats in exchange for songs or blessings. And in the church, Father Anselm leads a vigil service, praying for the souls of all the faithful departed, reading aloud the names of those who have died in the past year. There is a tension in the village tonight, a wariness that is not quite fear. The people of Aldford believe in a world that is larger and stranger than what their eyes can see. They believe in angels and demons, in saints and sinners, in the communion of souls that transcends the boundary of death. On most nights, these beliefs are abstract, theological, matters for the priest and the scholars to debate. But on All Hallows Eve, they become real, present, pressing in from all sides. Edmund the blacksmith sits in his cottage, watching the fire burn low. He is thinking of Catherine tonight, as he often does, but there is something different in his thoughts. He does not feel sad exactly. He feels grateful. Grateful for the years they had together. Grateful for the son she gave him. Grateful that she is at peace wherever she is, and that he will see her again some day in the fullness of time. He rises and goes to the door, opening it to the chill night air. The sky is clear, and the stars are bright, and somewhere in the distance he can hear the crackling of a bonfire and the distant sound of voices raised in song. He stands there for a long moment, letting the cold air wash over him, feeling the immensity of the night and the smallness of himself within it. And then softly he speaks his wife's name, just once, just to say it, just to acknowledge that she was here, that she mattered, that she is not forgotten. The wind stirs the leaves at his feet, and Edmund smiles. Perhaps it is only the wind. Perhaps it is something more. He does not know, and he does not need to know. It is enough to have spoken. It is enough to have remembered. He closes the door and returns to his fire, and the night passes, and morning comes, and All Hallows Eve gives way to All Saints' Day, and the veil between worlds thickens once again. November arrives, and with it the last tasks of the agricultural year. The fields have been cleared, the grain has been stored, and now the villagers turn their attention to preparing for winter. There are animals to be slaughtered, and meat to be salted and smoked. There are vegetables to be stored in root cellars, and fruits to be preserved in honey and vinegar. There are repairs to be made to cottages and barns, gaps to be stuffed with straw and mud before the cold winds come. Martinmas, the feast of Saint Martin on November 11th, is the traditional day for the autumn slaughter. The animals that cannot be fed through the winter, the old cows, the extra pigs, the geese that have fattened on the stubble fields, are killed and processed, their meat providing sustenance for the cold months ahead. It is hard work, bloody and exhausting, but it is also necessary, and the villagers approach it with the matter-of-fact acceptance of people who understand where their food comes from. On the day after Martinmas, Will goes to speak with Hugh the miller. He has thought about this conversation for months, rehearsed it in his mind 100 times, and now the moment has come. He finds Hugh in the mill, checking the great stone wheels that grind the grain, and he stands in the doorway, his heart pounding, until Hugh notices him and gestures for him to enter. The conversation is awkward, as such conversations always are. Will speaks of his prospects, the strips of land he will inherit when his father dies, the small savings he has put aside, the steady work he has found helping at the manor during the busy seasons. He speaks of his feelings for Cecily, careful to be respectful, careful not to presume too much, and he asks, with all the dignity he can muster, whether Hugh would consider allowing him to court his daughter with the intention of marriage. Hugh listens in silence, his weathered face giving nothing away. He is a practical man, and he is thinking practical thoughts about Will's character and his family's reputation, about whether he can provide for a wife and children, about what is best for Cecily's future. But he is also a father, and he remembers what it was like to be young and in love, and he can see the sincerity in Will's eyes. When Will has finished speaking, Hugh is quiet for a long moment. Then he nods slowly and extends his hand. "There will be a betrothal," he says. "Not immediately. Cecily is young yet, and there is no need to rush. But in the spring, perhaps, when the world is waking up again, and new beginnings seem natural, in the spring they can be formally promised, and in a year or two, when Will has established himself more fully, they can be wed." Will takes Hugh's hand and shakes it, his face breaking into a smile that he cannot suppress. He thanks Hugh, perhaps too many times, and then he leaves the mill and walks out into the gray November afternoon, and he feels as if he could fly, as if his feet are barely touching the ground. That evening he finds Cecily by the stream where they stood together on Midsummer's Eve. He tells her what has happened, and she throws her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. They stand there together as the light fades, holding each other, feeling the warmth of their shared future stretching out before them. The year is dying, but their life together is just beginning. December comes to Aldford like a slow exhalation, the land settling into stillness as the days grow short and the nights grow long. The trees have shed their leaves, standing bare and black against gray skies. The fields lie fallow, resting beneath blankets of frost, and the sun, when it appears at all, hangs low on the horizon, pale and distant, offering light but little warmth. This is Advent, the season of waiting and preparation, the 4 weeks before Christmas, when the Church calls the faithful to reflection and prayer. The penitential character of the season is lighter than Lent. There is no strict fasting, no giving up of meat or cheese, but there is a solemnity to it, a turning inward that matches the turning inward of the natural world. In the village, the pace of life has slowed. The urgent work of harvest is done, and while there are always tasks to occupy the hours, mending tools, repairing buildings, spinning wool, tending livestock, there is also time for rest, for conversation, for the quiet pleasures that the busy seasons do not allow. Father Anselm uses this time to visit his parishioners in their homes, checking on their spiritual and physical welfare, offering comfort and counsel to those in need. He is a familiar figure on the lanes of Aldford, wrapped in his worn black cloak, his breath misting in the cold air as he makes his rounds. The villagers welcome him warmly, for he brings news from other households and a listening ear for their own concerns. On one such visit, Father Anselm stops at the cottage of old Marjorie. He finds her sitting by her fire, wrapped in blankets, her ancient cat curled in her lap. She is older than anyone else in the village, old enough to remember things that others have forgotten, and Father Anselm has always valued her wisdom, even when it comes wrapped in folk belief and superstition. They talk of many things, of the year that has passed, of the village and its people, of the mysteries of faith and the strangeness of the world. Marjorie tells Father Anselm that she has dreamed of the coming winter, and in her dream it was hard but not cruel, cold but not killing. The village will endure, she says. The village always endures. Father Anselm does not know what to make of Marjorie's dreams. He is a man of the church, trained to be skeptical of such things, but he has also lived long enough to know that there is more in heaven and earth than is contained in any book, and he accepts Marjorie's words with a nod and a blessing. When he leaves, Marjorie sits alone by her fire, watching the flames dance. She is tired, she realizes, tired in a way that sleep does not cure. She has seen many winters, and she knows that she will not see many more. But this does not frighten her. She has lived a full life, a useful life. She has helped her neighbors and passed on what she knows. When her time comes, she will be ready, but not yet. Not quite yet. There is still a little more living to be done. The winter solstice arrives on the 21st of December, the longest night of the year. From this point forward, the days will begin to lengthen again, slowly at first, then faster, until spring returns and the cycle begins anew. But for now, the darkness is at its deepest, and the light seems very far away. In Aldford, the solstice is marked with the lighting of the Yule log, an ancient custom that predates the church but has been woven into the Christian celebration of Christmas. Sir Geoffrey has ordered a great log to be cut from one of the oaks on his land, a massive piece of wood so large that it takes 4 men to carry it. This log will be brought into the great hall of the manor house and set ablaze, and it will burn throughout the 12 days of Christmas, its flames a symbol of light and warmth and hope in the midst of winter's darkness. The lighting of the Yule log is a ceremony that the whole village attends. As the sun sets on the shortest day, the villagers gather in the courtyard of the manor house, their faces lit by torches, their breath rising in white clouds. Sir Geoffrey and Lady Isabel stand at the door of the great hall, welcoming their tenants, their children beside them. The log is carried in with great solemnity and placed in the enormous fireplace that dominates one wall of the hall. A fragment of last year's log, carefully preserved for this purpose, is used to light it, connecting this year's fire to the fires of years past, creating a chain of flame that stretches back into time immemorial. As the fire catches and the flames begin to rise, a cheer goes up from the assembled crowd. Wassail is passed around, a warm, spiced ale that drives the chill from the bones and brings a flush to the cheeks. Carols are sung, old songs that everyone knows, their words a mixture of Christian devotion and older, earthier celebration. Edmund stands near the fire, feeling its warmth on his face, watching the sparks rise up into the darkness. Thomas is beside him, taller now than his father, a man in his own right. They do not speak, but there is understanding between them, a bond that does not need words. Across the hall, Will and Cecily stand together, their hands intertwined. They are not yet married, not yet even formally betrothed, but everyone knows that they will be, and there is a tacit acceptance of their closeness that would not have been permitted a year ago. Cecily leans her head against Will's shoulder, and he smiles down at her, and the firelight makes her eyes shine like stars. The night passes in warmth and fellowship, in food and drink and song, and when at last the villagers make their way home through the cold darkness, they carry with them a spark of the Yule fire, not literally, but in their hearts, a warmth that will sustain them through the long nights ahead. Christmas Day dawns cold and clear, the sky a pale blue washed clean by the winter wind. Frost glitters on every surface, and the breath of men and animals rises in great plumes of white. It is a day of celebration, of joy, of thanksgiving for the gift of the Christ child and the promise of salvation. Father Anselm celebrates the Christmas Mass with particular care, his voice rising and falling in the ancient words of the liturgy, the candlelight flickering on the faces of the congregation. The church is decorated with evergreen boughs, holly and ivy and mistletoe, symbols of eternal life in the midst of winter's death. And on the altar, surrounded by candles, is a small wooden creche, a nativity scene showing the baby Jesus in his manger, watched over by Mary and Joseph, adored by shepherds and angels and the animals of the stable. After the Mass, the villagers make their way to the manor house for the Christmas feast. Sir Geoffrey and Lady Isabel have outdone themselves this year, and the great hall groans with abundance. There is roast beef and roast pork, meat pies and savory puddings, bread still warm from the ovens and great wheels of cheese. There are bowls of preserved fruits and dishes of honeyed nuts, and there is drink in plenty, ale and mead and spiced wine, enough to warm even the coldest heart. But the feast is not only for eating and drinking, there is entertainment as well. Musicians playing lively tunes, a troupe of mummers performing a traditional play, games and contests and storytelling. The boundaries between lord and peasant, which are usually so carefully maintained, seem to dissolve a little in the warmth and fellowship of the season. Lady Isabel moves through the hall, making sure that everyone has enough to eat and drink, paying special attention to the old and the young, the sick and the lonely. She stops to speak with Agnes, asking after her daughters and praising the cloth that Agnes wove for the manor this year. She visits with old Marjorie, bringing her a special cushion to ease her aching back. She compliments Edmund on the work his forge has done, and she wishes Will and Cecily well, her eyes twinkling with the knowledge of their hopes for the future. This is charity in the medieval sense of the word. Not condescension, not pity, but love. Love for one's neighbors, love for the community that sustains them all, love that is expressed not in words, but in actions. Lady Isabel was taught this by her mother, who was taught by her mother before her, going back generations. It is what it means to be a lady of the manor, and she takes the responsibility seriously. As the afternoon wears on, the light begins to fade, and the celebration gradually winds down. The villagers gather their things and prepare to head home, their bellies full, their spirits lifted. At the door of the great hall, Sir Geoffrey stands once again, bidding farewell to each of them, wishing them a blessed Christmas and a prosperous New Year. And then, one by one, they disappear into the winter twilight, the snow beginning to fall softly around them, their footsteps muffled by the white blanket that is slowly covering the world. The days between Christmas and Epiphany pass in a kind of dream, a suspension of ordinary time. The work of the fields is over, the animals are cared for but not demanding, and there is little to do but rest and celebrate. The villagers visit each other's homes, sharing food and drink and stories. Children play in the snow, building forts and having snowball fights, their laughter ringing through the cold air. And in the evenings, families gather around their fires, listening to the wind howl outside while they tell the old tales that have been passed down through generations. In the cottage of Edmund the blacksmith, there is a quietness that is not lonely but peaceful. Edmund and Thomas sit by the fire, working on small projects. Thomas is carving a wooden spoon. Edmund is mending a piece of harness. And they talk sometimes of the year that has passed and the year to come. Thomas speaks of a girl he has noticed in the village, the daughter of the carpenter, and Edmund listens and nods and offers what advice he can. It is strange, Edmund thinks, to be giving advice about love. For so long he has been the one grieving, the one holding back, the one for whom love was a memory rather than a possibility. But something has changed in him over this past year. The grief has not gone away, but it has transformed, becoming something he can carry rather than something that carries him. And he finds that his heart, which he thought was closed forever, is beginning to open again. He does not know what the future holds. Perhaps he will remarry someday, perhaps not, but he knows now that the possibility exists, and that knowledge is itself a kind of freedom. In the cottage of Agnes the weaver, the fire burns bright, and the sound of girlish laughter fills the air. Nell and Joan are playing a game with wooden dolls, acting out a story that involves a princess and a dragon and a brave knight who looks suspiciously like young Will. Agnes watches them, her hands busy with her spindle, her heart full of a love that is fierce and tender and inexhaustible. These girls are her world. Everything she does for them. The cloth she weaves, the food she prepares, the home she maintains, all of it is for them, so that they might grow up healthy and happy and strong. It is hard, being a widow with children to raise. There are days when the weight of it feels like more than she can bear. But then she looks at her daughters, sees the joy in their faces, and she knows that it is all worth it. Every struggle, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt, all of it is worth it for this. In the cottage of old Marjorie, the fire is burned down low and the old woman dozes in her chair, her cat curled at her feet. She is dreaming, and in her dream she is young again, walking through a meadow in summer, the grass tall and the flowers bright. There is someone walking beside her, her husband perhaps, who died so many years ago that she can barely remember his face, or her mother, who taught her the names of herbs and the secrets of healing. She cannot quite see who it is, but she knows that she is not alone, and that is enough. The dream fades, and Marjorie wakes to the dim light of her cottage, the embers glowing red in the hearth. She is very tired and very old, and she knows that her time is drawing near. But she is not afraid. She has lived a good life, a full life, and when her time comes, she will go peacefully, like the sun setting at the end of a long day. But not yet, not quite yet. The year is not quite over, and there are still a few more moments to savor. The 12th night of Christmas arrives, marking the end of the festive season and the return to ordinary time. In the village of Aldford, this final celebration is marked with a feast and revelry, a last burst of joy before the long, quiet days of January begin. The villagers gather one last time in the great hall of the manor, or in the alehouse, or in their own humble cottages, to share food and drink and fellowship. There is a king cake, baked with a dried bean hidden inside, and whoever finds the bean in their slice is crowned the king or queen of misrule, ruling over the festivities for the rest of the evening. This year, the honor falls to little Joan, Agnes's youngest daughter, who accepts her paper crown with solemn dignity and proceeds to issue absurd commands that send the adults into gales of laughter. As the evening wears on, the celebration gradually winds down. The children fall asleep in corners, exhausted by the excitement. The adults grow quiet, their thoughts turning inward, reflecting on the year that has passed and the year that lies ahead. There is a bitter sweetness to this moment, a recognition that something precious is ending, even as something new is beginning. Will and Cecily slip away from the gathering, finding a quiet spot near the fire where they can talk without being overheard. They speak of their future, of the betrothal that will come in the spring, of the home they will build together, of the children they hope to have someday. It is a conversation full of hope and anticipation, but also of a certain solemnity, for they know that the path ahead will not always be easy. Life is hard in this time and place. There will be struggles and sorrows, disappointments and losses, but there will also be joy and love and the deep satisfaction of building something together, and that they both know is worth any hardship. Across the village, the fires are being banked and the candles are being extinguished. The Yule log, which is burned throughout the 12 days of Christmas, is finally reduced to embers, and a piece of it is carefully set aside to light next year's fire. The decorations of holly and ivy are taken down and will be burned, their ashes scattered on the fields to bring luck to the coming year's crops. In her cottage, old Marjorie sits by her dying fire, watching the last of the flames flicker and fade. She is thinking of all the 12th nights she has seen, all the years that have turned beneath her watchful eyes. So many faces, so many stories, so many lives lived and ended and begun again. The village changes, but it also stays the same. The wheel turns and turns and turns. She closes her eyes, and for a moment she can see it all. The endless procession of seasons, the generations rising and falling like waves on the shore, the great pattern of which her own small life is just a single thread. It is beautiful, she thinks. It is terribly, achingly beautiful. And then sleep takes her, gently, like a mother lifting a child, and she rests. The fire has burned low now in every hearth in Aldford. The candles have guttered out one by one, leaving only darkness and the faint glow of embers. The village lies quiet beneath a blanket of snow, the white drifts smoothing every angle and softening every edge, turning the familiar landscape into something dreamlike and strange. Let us move through the village one last time, as silent as the falling snow, as gentle as the night itself, past the church of St. Mary, where the eternal lamp burns before the altar, a single point of light in the vast darkness, past the alehouse, where the last drinkers have long since stumbled home, past the mill, its great wheel still and silent, waiting for the spring thaw, past the forge, where the fire sleeps in its bed of coals, dreaming of the work to come. In each cottage the villagers are sleeping now. Edmund lies in his bed, his breath slow and even, his face peaceful in the darkness. Thomas sleeps nearby, and in his dreams he is walking through a summer meadow with a girl whose face he cannot quite see, but whose laughter he knows as well as his own heartbeat. Agnes sleeps with her daughters curled against her, the three of them tangled together like puppies in a basket, sharing warmth and breath and love. In her dreams, Agnes is weaving, but the cloth she creates is made of light, shimmering and beautiful, stretching out to infinity. Will and Cecily have parted for the night, returned to their separate homes, but they are dreaming of each other. In Will's dream, he and Cecily are standing by the stream on a warm summer evening, and the future stretches before them like a golden road. In Cecily's dream, she is holding a child, her child, their child, and the love she feels is so fierce and so tender that it wakes her briefly, and she lies in the darkness smiling before sleep takes her again. Old Marjorie dreams of her garden in full bloom, every herb and flower flourishing, the bees humming and the sun shining, and the world full of green growing things. She dreams of the people she has helped over the years, the babies she has delivered, the wounds she has healed, the sorrows she has eased. She dreams of her husband and her mother and all the loved ones who have gone before her, and in the dream they are not gone at all, but waiting just beyond the next hill, just around the next bend in the road. And Sir Geoffrey and Lady Isabel sleep in their great bed in the manor house, wrapped in furs and blankets, their children safe in the next room, their tenants safe in their cottages, the whole village held in the palm of their care. They dream of nothing in particular, but they sleep deeply, the sleep of those who have done their duty and earned their rest. The snow continues to fall, softly, steadily, covering the world in white. The stars wheel overhead, the same stars that have looked down on this village for 1,000 years, and will look down on it for 1,000 more. The night is deep and quiet and peaceful, and in the silence there is no sound but the gentle breathing of those who sleep.